Today on Dice to Pixels, after predicting the other week that games as a service will take a dramatic shift away, we're kind of walking back on that now.
No, we're not.
No,
we're
I'm
not.
not. That was my prediction.
We're probably wrong, but we're not walking back.
No.
Yeah. But I want to apologize if I sound kind of like down or whatever. I've been having a very poor week this week, mental health wise. So this is a bit of a big step, and just if any of you got like the same kind of anxiety, depression issues, man, talk to people. Seriously, don't let it eat you away inside. So
absolutely, there are far more people understand that stuff than you will ever appreciate. So if you are struggling, reach out.
Yeah.
With that said, so 500 studios apparently. This is the latest information we've got. 500 studios are currently working on live service games. To which I say 488 studios are going bankrupt this year.
That's what I mean. Like, yeah, sure, there's 500 studios doing live service games or making them. But when those come out, they're going to some of them will do well, but most of them are not going to last very long. They'll be like some of the other live service games that get shut down after 4 months.
Yeah, if I'm a studio working on a live service game and I see that information, I would have to be profoundly sure that I am, like, profoundly confident that I am working on the right thing.
Yep.
500 live service games can't, I mean...
500 studios.
Well, but, I mean, presumably at least 500 games, right?
Yeah.
You can't have that many going at the same time. There's the market, the gaming market is huge, but I don't think it's that huge.
Yeah, especially considering stuff like Fortnite and, WoW are still, high in Pal World now. Pal World's been... just lately they've been killing it.
Yeah, and like not everything needs to be at that level of success, but even I guess it depends. If you want a small success in your live service game, that's fine, but presumably that's not why these studios are doing it. So
yeah, it's interesting. This is a report from Games Industry. Griffin Gaming Partners and Rendered VC released their 23 game development report. Surveying 537, and 95% of the studios surveyed are developing or maintaining a live service game, while 66% of the studios agree that live service is necessary for the long-term success of a video game. Stardew Valley.
Right?
Well, yeah, and like Minecraft and like a million
Sims.
other games that don't have this. Project Zomboid, fucking No Man's Sky. Like live service is not the best games in the world are not live service games. Skyrim, yeah. Like that is such a fucking stupid thing for them to have said. It's a requirement to continue making money from the game.
Yes.
Well, mostly. I mean, again, things like Stardew Valley are still making money. But.
Yeah. But so for me, I can't get my mind wrapped around what the difference between a live service game and an MMORPG is, because just by my head definition, they more or less seem like the same thing.
So, I mean, that's because they usually are.
Yeah.
Strictly speaking, something like Helldivers, where you're only ever playing with like 4 people at a time, but you have to be connected to the internet to do matchmaking and then get into a game.
Yeah.
That's live service.
Okay.
So live service is like you are required to be online because there is a service that you are connected to that is doing something, matchmaking or otherwise. Yeah. It doesn't have to be multiplayer at all, although obviously it always is, because why else would you
do it? Yeah.
Really. But most games tend to be some level of MMO. I mean, massive, something like Battlefield 1942, where it was like 30 people aside, maybe. Most people wouldn't call that massive, but a lot of people still referred to it as an MMO, even though it kind of wasn't. But yeah, basically anything that you have to be connected to, technically all Steam games are live service for the record.
Yeah, I was going to say, wouldn't that be cloud service games at some point too?
Strictly speaking, every game on Steam is live service, so technically they're going nowhere, but nobody really calls those live service
Yeah.
games. But
Well,
that is what they are.
even like the Ubisoft has been guilty of this lately too with their Ubisoft Connect service, where
Yeah.
even if you're playing Valhalla, which like Assassin's Creed game, which is more than likely a single player game,
Yeah.
but you still have to be like connected online. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
I think you can play offline. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and there's an argument that some people are talking about games like that where you just have to be connected for whatever update software or something, that those are live service, and they're not wrong. It's just that that's not what people are talking about when they're talking
Yeah.
about live. They're talking about matchmaking. They're talking about,
Mhm.
whatever. Those are live service games. Something like the fact that I have to be connected to the internet to play Stardew Valley on Steam, which is only slightly true. That I would never call that a live service
No.
game, even though technically it kind of is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think even with like with the NES Online and the SNES and all those little online things on the Switch, I think you have to be online in order
Yeah,
to play those games.
I think those are all. Well, I think I don't know specifically. I think usually they allow you to play like one or two, and then it like requires you to reconnect.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I don't know specifically for the Nintendo thing. I just know for other ones, they often let you like, you're offline. We'll let you play one. Although those ones specifically, I think, are streamed. So those ones you literally have to be connected. Yeah, I mean, I assume these people are talking about live service, meaning matchmaking and everything
Mhm.
else. And yeah, I mean, if you want to continue bleeding people for money forever, then yeah, live services is required. If you want to deliver something cool and then work on the next thing and deliver something cool, live service is not required.
No.
But we've also seen that most studios, I think I'm fair in saying most studios, have just given up on being creative. They're just
Yeah.
trying to shove the next, carbon copy of a game down your throat.
Well, it's almost as it can almost be as comparable as the last time. Well, not last time, but when the big video game downfall in the 80s,
Yeah.
when everything just went to shit because games didn't have the quality control, and it was the same thing over and over again. It was just junk. But like the number of games that are coming out now that are just trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's genres and like the big open world sandbox kind of crap. Like you see that in so many cases, and some developers can do it really well, others can't. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. But even more simply than that, I mean, you were harping on it earlier with the farming simulator.
Yep.
Like
oh, fuck.
there's enough, unless you have something truly groundbreaking to add to that space. Like you basically said that the new one is Stardew Valley in space. It's like that's
Yeah.
not unique enough to be interesting.
And it's not unique at all because there is one on Steam already that I've had on my wish list for years. I just haven't bought it because I have Stardew Valley already.
Yeah, so it releases March 19th of this year. It's called Lightyear Frontier, and there's going to be like a game preview for it on like Game Pass. But looking at it, it's basically you're on another planet and you're creating a farm. You're maintaining a farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I'm not saying anything bad about that. It's just like if that's your strategy, you're limiting your audience right out of the gate, because anyone who has Stardew Valley, they're probably just going to keep fucking playing Stardew Valley.
But then they'll also get that because I like Stardew Valley, but then a number of other games that I've tried that are also farming simulators. Granted, I don't really stick with anything for too long, but I didn't really stick with them super long. The only other one that I stuck with for any length of time was really Coral Island, because it took a lot of elements from various games like Stardew Valley, and it took Animal Crossing and a lot of different, like the core really cool elements of lots of other cozy games and jam them all into one. So it was pretty decent.
Yeah.
But like that, like whereas if you go with something like Graveyard Keeper, it has the same sort of elements where you are building more or less a farm there too, but then it's got this other little twist on it at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, Graveyard Keeper is broadly very similar to
Mhm.
Stardew. Like I find myself only playing one or the other.
Yeah.
And hey, I'm not saying that there isn't room for a third one. I mean, God knows there's 500 of them already. But if that's your strategy, is to try and like one up amazing games like Stardew and Graveyard Keeper, like set yourself up for failure just a little bit more, why don't you?
Mhm.
Like, Jesus fucking Christ, what a stupid thing to try, especially for your first game. If you've been at it for a while and you know what people like, then that's fine. But so many of these studios, their first game is like, we're gonna get the Stardew crowd, and it's like, you're probably not.
I mean, you're going to get their money initially, and then they're going to
Maybe.
not, and then they're going to dip out. But
Only if you sell it cheap enough.
yes,
Which
this is many of them don't.
many of them don't. And if you sell it that cheap, are you really making your money back?
Yeah.
Reminds me of the late 90s when Metal Gear Solid was pretty much about to be released, and the whole stealth espionage genre like took off. I think Tenchu Stealth Assassins came out just before Metal Gear Solid did, and it like, yeah, I mean, ninjas sneaking around and, you know, killing, all that stuff. Like, it was a fun game. I dug it.
Yeah.
And then you had Metal Gear Solid, and then you had Siphon Filter, and then you had Splinter Cell. Yeah.
Well, and you see it everywhere, right? It's happening again in movies. Same sort of thing.
Oh,
like
yeah.
everybody's just releasing the same fucking thing over and over again, with some exceptions, obviously. But like a lot of it's there's just the same shit. And like people get burnt out. I mean, look at Marvel. They had a money printing machine, and then they overdid it.
Yep.
Stop fucking overdoing it.
White Game, actually, I off the top of my head, I can't think of any other things that have been comparable or have copied the ideas. Spiritfarer. There we go. I almost said Spirited Away. That is a movie. But Spiritfarer, I can't think of anything else that's quite like it. Like, it has similar elements to other cozy type games because obviously that's what people are going for. But in that, I don't know, just the environment itself, it hasn't really been captured the same way.
Yeah, and I should clarify, like when I said earlier, most studios, realistically, there are tens of thousands of indie studios that probably haven't ever released a game and might never, and but when I say most studios, I'm obviously talking about more of the funded studios, not even necessarily mainstream, just like you hear about them. They're the sort of people that exist. Whereas like a guy working in his basement or a girl working in their basement, just hacking away on a game that hasn't seen the light of day. Nobody knows they exist. Nobody knows that game. Nobody knows that studio.
Until Stardew Valley is released. And
until it's released. So like those people, they're not showing up on this survey.
Yeah.
They're not part of the 97% that are working on a live service. So like take most studios with a caveat there, because most studios we've never heard of.
Yeah.
So,
but one we have heard of is called Rocksteady, and they did the Batman Arkham series, and they just released Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League to
General Tanning.
But yeah, so there was a review embargo on this up until January 30th. And there was really no reviews for this game until today, where now it's already got a Metacritic rating of 61.
Yeah.
It's not being well received. The early access people, I guess there was server issues right off the hop. They've compensated those players with in-game currency, I guess, that they can use. So, I mean, yay. But I kind of had this feeling that it wasn't going to be good when I first found out that, one, it was a looter shooter, two, it was live service. And then they delayed it. I just had this, you ever like that voice in the back of your head that's like, no, just wait. And I'm glad I did. I watched some gameplay of it the other day, and it just looks so meh,
Yeah, and it's interesting. We were talking a little bit about the the Steam reviews, because right now Steam still has it as a very positive
Mhm.
as of right now when we're recording this. Who knows what it'll be tomorrow when we release it. But it's interesting because most of the negative reviews I'm seeing now, admittedly, I'm only scrolling through a handful of them. Most of them are basically like, the negative reviews are this is everything about this is mediocre at best.
Hmm.
And then weirdly, a lot of the positive reviews are saying the same thing. Like this is probably the 7th review I've seen that says basically this exact same thing. Not bad, but not really good either. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, it's a $70 game. If it's not that bad, but not good either, then it's bad.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not.
And they've got it as a recommended title. And it's like, how little do you value your fucking money?
Yeah. Well, and one review here on Metacritic, quote, with a campaign that's just a 13-hour tutorial for the service design grind, Suicide Squad has nothing particularly interesting to offer, even if the gameplay manages to provide occasional moments of fun.
Yeah.
That's
Like, this is the thing. Like,
That's damning.
so many of the recommended reviews are like, there are some that legitimately they're like, this is a great game, I love it. Okay, cool. Like, everybody has their taste. That's
Yep.
perfectly fine. But I'm reading so many of these recommended reviews that it's like, you're actually saying this is not a good game. Like, the number of them that are like, I'd buy it on sale. It's like, well, then it's not a recommended fucking game.
Yeah, no.
yeah. Well, and yeah, there was even that kind of talk with Gotham Knights, and I'll look at the Avengers when the Avengers came out, and the Avengers was a live service game too, and it got shit on, mostly because like there wasn't enough to it, there wasn't enough there, and a lot of the one thing I will say is, at least from what I've read so far, is that any future DLC for this game is going to be free,
Sure.
right? So okay, great, good.
I mean,
but-
they'd have to at this point.
Yeah, like again, it's always kind of touchy when the developer has to delay a release or something. That's usually a pretty damning, it's like, okay, well, why
Well, it depends.
for this style of game,
Yeah,
like a
like-
live
like
service shooter.
And a large studio,
Yeah.
right? Like, when a large studio has to delay their game, it's a bad sign. When a small studio has to delay, it's like that happens, right?
Yeah.
Also, the review embargo.
That says a lot more to me.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to have that, because like, why?
Yeah. Well, clearly they know that it's not going to review that well. So they don't want the bad publicity right away. But by saying, no, you can't review it, and there's no reviews out, and people know that there's an embargo, they're going to be like, well, there's something wrong with this game. Or at least they're like, if they're like me and Chad, where they're just incredibly cynical that way.
Yeah,
and then the servers go down. They have server issues on like the day one of early access, which most live service games do.
Well, this is what I was gonna say. Like, honestly, basically everything we're saying about this game is mirrored to what I said and we said at the time for Diablo 4.
Yep.
The launch didn't go well. It fundamentally wasn't that good at release, but it's been getting better.
Mhm.
And I suspect this will get better. And it's fine if people want to drop 7. I bought 2 copies of Diablo 4, knowing full well that it wasn't going to be that good a game when it launched. And if people buy it knowing that it's going to get better, more power to them.
Yep.
And some of these people probably, like, I've seen a few reviews where people are saying, like, the core gameplay loop, is very satisfying. Great. If that's your cup of tea, awesome.
Mhm.
The problem comes in where it's like, oh, it's not that good a game, but you should get it. It's like, fuck off.
Yeah, no.
like I fanboyed over Diablo 4 knowing that it wasn't good, but I didn't then fucking lie and say that it was good.
No.
Yeah.
I said in a year it will be, and I stand by that. Later this year it'll be a good game.
I
I've
find
said that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I've said that recently too about something, and I can't remember what it was, but it was something that I can't remember what it was. I think it was Prison City. It came out on Steam either late last year or beginning of this year, and I basically said it's a good game. if you're a fan of like the old school Mega Man, the Mega Man titles, it's kind of similar to that, and it's cheap too. But yeah, like if it's one of the, even if you're a fan of like the Suicide Squad or the DC properties and whatever, I don't know if like if
I wouldn't want to go in as a fan of them, of the characters themselves. I wouldn't want to do that. I would have to go in the mindset of, I think this type of game appeals to people that enjoy that type of game. Those are the people that are like, this is good, this is satisfying, this is worth the money. It's the people that like those looter shooters with that simple gameplay loop, or I'm assuming it's simple. Yeah. Whereas if you go in as a fan of those characters, you're going to go in and you're probably going to be disappointed.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could see it either way. But the one thing I know for sure is if you're reviewing a game and you're like, hey, this wasn't that good and it's not worth the money, that's a thumbs down.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I find the review system for Steam kind of weird that way, where it's either just a thumb up or a thumb down, where like, why isn't there something in the middle to say, like, I enjoyed this?
The reason there isn't is because that would be 95% of reviews.
Yeah. Because, like, people that aren't, like, it's okay, it's good, just don't pay this much money for it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I could see why there'd be a lot of reviews like that.
So we ran into this with hiring quite a bit, where a lot of people use, like, a 5-point scale, and the number of people who come in at 3, unfucking believable. It's like, that's not helpful. Should I hire them or not?
Yeah.
So a lot of the times, whenever I was part of hiring, whenever I had actual like control over the process, I would make sure that we did a 4-point scale, because then it's like, there is no middle. You either say it's good or it's bad. You can say it's like really bad or like a little bad. And I do think Steam could stand to have like a, no, this is like fucking bad versus like, it's just not quite there. I do think they could stand with that, but if they gave you like a, it's fine, 90% of reviews would just be, it's fine.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help anyone.
Yeah.
So, but I do think they need like a 2 thumbs and a 2 thumbs. Like it's a little too binary right now. It could stand a little bit of zhushing. So, but yeah, no, it's just, I see stuff like this and it's just like the people who are like, yeah, it's not that good, but I'm like, I want to defend it, so I'm going to give it a good mark anyways. It's like, fuck off. You're not helping anyone.
No.
Yeah. And then, I look at, there's a lot of these live service games, they have all the issues, that we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hold the launch weekend against them. Like, that's a very temporal thing. It sucks, but it doesn't last.
Yeah. Nope. But also, too, in general, a lot of people don't have the time to devote to so many of them, which I think is it's ultimately going to be the biggest issue with a lot of these developers that are doing these live service games, is that people aren't they're just not going to have the time to invest in all of these, especially if they're like a grindy kind of game. I mean, like I said, I spent fucking years playing Destiny 2. The only other one that I really got into was The Division 1 and 2. And I really liked those games, but like when I tried to get into other ones, like I tried Exoprimal, not interested. Anthem when it came out, nope.
Well, and this is kind of where I was going with the like 500 is too goddamn many, and I'd be very concerned if I was one of those studios working on it. Because the one thing I can say is pretty universal, not totally. There are some people that are like really, really into gaming live service. Most people who play a live service game, they do exactly that. They play a live service game. They don't play 3. They don't play. They play 1.
Yep.
You play Destiny, you usually just play Destiny. You might play other games, but you don't usually play Destiny and World of Warcraft. No. There are other ones like Helldivers, for instance. Like it's sort of like, and maybe more of them are working on that sort of game, and that's fine, where it's pretty casual. It's like you pick it up, you play a 10-minute round, and then you go on with life. And if that's what people are working on, okay.
Yeah.
There's room for a bunch of those. But those ones without the subscription and everything else, they tend to struggle to make money on the long term. Like that's why Helldivers was, I think, shut down.
Yeah.
just because it's like, well, we're not selling the game anymore, so we can't fund the service. So,
Speaking of, Helldivers 2 releases on February 8th.
oh, I'm grabbing it. I actually don't even know if I'm gonna like it that much because it's not like the top down sort of
Mhm.
2.5D that the original was.
Mhm.
So I don't even know if I'm gonna like it that much. But I liked the original so much that
You're willing to give it a go.
to be fair, I don't know that it's shut down. I think that it's shut down. But that is a problem that live service games run into
Yeah.
if they don't charge a monthly fee or whatever, or don't have seasons or whatever the fuck. You either build like a trust fund to like an endowment fund to keep your service running, or you eventually run out of money to keep your service running.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, I'll say, look at some of the top games from last year, like Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of
Mhm.
Stars, Dredge, Venma, like just a lot of these games that weren't online, but they offered like unique experiences that were really, I mean, Alan Wake 2 was another one that was it was a fun trip. It was a really good game. Baldur's Gate 3, yes, there's online stuff to it, but I mean, the experience it offers alone, you can just sit there by yourself,
yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
And I think that's something a lot more studios should get comfortable with is, if you want to offer a live service, fine. Make sure your game is first and foremost a good game.
Hmm.
And if you want to add a few online bits, that's fine. But don't make it core to the game because you're setting yourself up for failure. Because if you create something that requires a service to run, you are requiring that it sells a ton of copies.
Mhm.
Like Sea of Stars, as much as they would have lost money, Sea of Stars could have sold 5 copies and it would have been exactly as good a game as if it sold 5 million.
Mhm.
Something like Anthem was only good because people bought a lot of copies. And then as soon as people stopped playing it, it became complete shit.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yep.
So it's like, unless you are damn sure that your game's going to be a blockbuster, you should focus on making it a good game first and then maybe add some live stuff to it.
Actually, a good example of that is Journey.
Yep.
I loved the incredibly unintrusive multiplayer aspect to that, where it just happens randomly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. I think we'll probably call it there.
Okay.
What's our time?
28.
Oh, yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're gonna be playing some multiplayer Stardew Valley using our live service
God, it is too.
that Sarah just signed up for. We'll be having some fun doing that.
Yeah.
I hope all of you are having some fun too. I'm gonna drop a community note on the channel. We missed the Wednesday video because we were talking about a
Unique D&D campaign.
a unique D&D campaign that apparently Google flagged for having, or YouTube flagged for having a few too many of a certain mentions of a word in. So I'll drop a community note with some more information on that. But otherwise, we'll see you next week.